So good evening, everyone. Just waiting for more people to come along. But before we start the session, we'll have a moment's silence, please. And then I'll introduce the facilitator for this program. Thank you. So greetings to you all. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Vladimir Yatsenko. It's the first time we've worked with him at NAMA, and it's a great pleasure that we're going to do so. He's the Director of Research at La Grace Center in South Carolina in the USA. Now, he's a scholar and an instructor of Sanskrit and Sanskrit literature, and an educator in Vedic and Vedantic studies. He's aligned with various educational institutions across the world, including the Indian Psychology Institute, which is nearby us in Pondicherry, International Center for Integral Studies, New Delhi, India, and Aura University in Surat in India, and also the Arogya Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and many others. So in this session, Dr. Vladimir will be examining the paradigm shift from the Veda to Vedanta, Samkhya, and yoga in the light of Sri Aurobindo. So I'm very much looking forward to this. There are vast gaps in my knowledge of the ancient Indian texts, so it'll be very interesting from my perspective to be a little bit more enlightened about this particular subject. So over to you, Vladimir, and hope everyone enjoys the session.
Thank you. Thank you, James, and thank you for inviting me to this discourse. These are discourses. That means we are free to engage, to ask questions, to clarify things on the fly. So I will be presenting my topic first, maybe 10-20 minutes, if it is not very boring or very difficult, then, yeah, but you are free to interrupt, to come in anytime and clarify things. So the whole idea was to present the developmental paradigm, to see it on the scale of time, from the beginning of a known historic knowledge of the Veda, so to say, Samhita period, which is the oldest, and towards our times. So what has happened? What has changed during this long time, long period? So I prepared some PowerPoint presentation for us. Here it is. And we can see the time frame. So if you look at the time frame, we will see that the oldest texts are dated from 6000 BC. That was Tilak. His calculations of Taittiriya Samhita, which he found in the Taittiriya Samhita texts according to Jyotisha. So he considers this to be 6000 BC approximately. Whereas if Taittiriya is 6000 BC, then Rigveda most probably much earlier. Yes? So we do not know about what period of time we are talking about, but before 6000 BC for sure. So Samhita texts were, it's the whole literature. There are 4 Vedas, as you know. There's Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, 4 Vedas. And all of them are very archaic in their approach to knowledge. They have a very different epistemology than in the post-Vedic period. So then the new period of time comes, and that is Brahmanic period, but a period of the commentaries on the Samhitas. And all the Brahmanas are basically commentaries on the texts of the Shruti or revelation. Shruti means which was heard by the impersonal consciousness of the Rishi. He prepared himself to receive this impersonal knowledge. So that which was perceived as revelation was commented upon by the following scholars, Rishis, and the whole tradition. Tradition was built around these texts. Sri Aurobindo considers this to be a new stage for the development of Indian knowledge. So the first stage was Samhitas, which was the revelation. And we will speak about this more. Who are the Rishis, why they are there, um, what they really represent for the humanity, and especially for the Indian knowledge, Hinduism, yoga, everything what we know about Indian psychology, philosophy is coming from the Vedic Rishis. They brought down this vision. We will deal with it in detail. And the second stage is this Brahmanic literature, where these texts were taken in another form. They were viewed in the framework of ritualistic application and mythological explanation. So basically, these experiences of the Vedic Rishis, direct interaction with the gods or the higher powers of universal consciousness, and bringing them down into the action on earth, were commented upon in the form of the stories, myths, and finally ritualistic applications. So all the hymns were attached to a particular ritualistic action. So the whole life of the Brahmin was ritualized to the extent that he had no free time for himself. Every moment of his day and night was kind of assigned to a particular action of consciousness, which is quite interesting because it looks at the life of the human being from the spiritual point of view. But this ritualism made its shift away from the knowledge as experience towards the knowledge as the convention or tradition. And so Sri Aurobindo also speaks about the stages, or the ages, as he calls them. And so the first symbolic age is most probably assigned to this Satya Yuga, or the time of the Samhitas. And the typal age is the age of when the types were created from those revelations. And these types are the ritualistic formations of the Brahmanas. And finally, we move towards the conventional age, where it became, where, as Sri Aurobindo says, the cloth became more important than the the one who is dressing, wearing the cloth. So the appearance, the presentation became more important than the truth which it presents. So this is the conventional age, and finally we come and arrive at the individualist age of the Kali Yuga. If we compare them with the Yugas, that would be Satya Yuga, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali Yuga. Quite interesting that they fit into this way of thinking. We can also compare these four with structures of consciousness of Gebser. Gebser also spoke about archaic, magic, mythical, and mental structure of consciousness. So the mental structure of consciousness is the most critical. It belongs to our Kali Yuga time. So, but this is a general formation which we have to understand in order to see how the knowledge paradigm shifted from one particular formation to another. And still, I want to say that all these shifts, once we understand what languages they use, what approaches they use, epistemologies, we will see that they are talking about the same knowledge, the same fundamental integral vision of reality. And this is something very interesting. Sri Aurobindo speaks about synthesis of knowledge. So the first synthesis was the Samhita synthesis, belonging to the Vedas. This was the great synthesis of knowledge. Then next was Brahmanic attempt to synthesize, to make it meaningful in the holistic sense, all the bits and pieces of knowledge. And it was put into the mythological and ritualistic context. So the Dinacharya, as we know, yes, for the whole view of the time was created in Ayurveda on this ground also. So the Jyotisha started to play its role, the stars, their time, the timing of the year, the seasons, different involvements during the time. So all this comes within this Brahmanic period of typal age, of the creation of the types or the rituals. And finally, Aranyaka is the time for recollection or reflection upon the knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and the married life in the period of Vanaprastha ashrama of the Brahmin's life, where he was reflecting upon what he learned in his Brahmacharya period and what he went through his Grihastha period. It's quite amazing how the systems of knowledge and ashramas and everything is correlated in the mind of the Hindus. And finally, sannyasa period, when he is seeking only the divine, and that is Upanishadic metaphysical treatises, to which also Gita is included. It's quite interesting that they include Gita, though Bhagavad Gita is from Mahabharata, taken away from Mahabharata. And if you read the Gita, at the end of each chapter, you will read that it is Upanishad. They are considering Gita to be the Upanishads. So I will read you there. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu. Thus, in the Gita's Upanishads, Brahma Vidyayam in the Brahma Vidya, Yoga Shastra in the Yoga Shastra, Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade in this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, Sam Yoga, here Vishada Yoga Nama, Prathamo Adhyaya. So every time there are 18 Adhyayas, at the end you hear this, that in the Upanishads of the Gita, So Gita is also part of this Shruti canon. So the Shruti canon has these four different sections. Yeah? Samhita, Brahmanas, it's a very extensive literature, Brahmanic literature. Aranyakas, which are part of Brahmanas, joining the Brahmanas, and Upanishads. Sri Aurobindo considers Upanishads to be the third synthesis. So the first was the Samhitas. This next attempt to synthesize knowledge was Brahmanas. And each Samhita, each Veda has a particular Brahmana assigned to it. We can look into it if you want to. So, for example, Rig Veda Samhita has Aitareya Brahmana and Kaushitaki Brahmana, two Brahmanas. Each Samhita has a number of Brahmanas. Vajasani Samhita has Shatapatha Brahmana, and so Taitiriya Samhita, Taitiriya Brahmana. So these Brahmanas is the second attempt to synthesize knowledge, and the third is Upanishads. So there were huge gaps between these periods, though I don't show these gaps. I read 6,000, 3,000 BC. You see how approximate it is because we do not know the timing for sure. And Samhita texts are huge. There are 4 Vedas. It's a big literature. And Brahmanas, Sri Aurobindo says there were several, maybe 1,000 years between Samhitas and Brahmanas. It was a gap, and that gap had to be crossed. So there was a new attempt to reconsider, recapture the Vedic knowledge of the Rishis in a new fashion. And then, in the period of Upanishads, another gap was there, several hundred years at least. And the Upanishads are arriving at the Vedic knowledge in a totally new fashion. So they are more mentalized, they're closer to our language. We can see the shift in language. When we read these texts, we immediately see how differently they treat the knowledge. So this is something, the general scheme I wanted. So we have 3 different attempts to synthesize knowledge. First is Samhitas, original. Second is Brahmanas, recapturing this knowledge in ritualistic and mythological formation. And we will see these explanations there in Brahmanas. And finally, Aranyakas are in between. And finally, we are shifting towards purely metaphysical approach to knowledge in the Upanishads and the Gita. And it is much closer to our language, to our mental structure of consciousness. Yeah? If you have to clarify something, you can always interrupt. Smriti scriptures, we continue, maybe we will continue with this later, not to overload with all the other formations of knowledge which are following. This is within the mental structure already, within a known history to us, within the historic period which we know very well, and all the texts are available and the commentaries on them. We study these texts such as Sankhya and Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Vakyapadiya of Bhartrihari, all the Tantras, Mahayana Buddhism, all these forms of knowledge is available to us and well known and well studied. It's what we understand as Indian philosophy in general. This is the literature of Indian philosophy. But the preceding formation is much more important. Here, Sri Aurobindo speaks about one more synthesis of knowledge, and that is Tantra. Tantra, here it is. Tantra started with Puranas, but there are three different sections: Shaiva, Vaishnava, and Shakta. So they belong to three different, so to say, godheads. Yes? So Shiva, Vishnu, and Shakti. And there are many more varieties, smaller varieties in between, which we don't even touch in this introductory course. Now, what I wanted to say that in the Samhita period, the approach was experiential. It wasn't at all, they were not trying, as Sri Aurobindo says, to systematize knowledge. They didn't bother to satisfy the mental logic or try to, to create asymmetries which would satisfy the mentality and logical way of answering questions. They were dealing with the reality directly, and they call these higher powers of consciousness gods. They give them names. And we will look specifically into the structure because it's very important for us to see how it is being maintained through other structures, changing the language, changing the approach, but the knowledge will be the same. And this is the purpose of this course. There's something else which I wanted to share with you before we go into the discussions, and that is the archetypal way of thinking in Indian tradition. This archetypal way of thinking was formed within this Brahmanic period of ritualism and mythological creation of myths. So we can see a very interesting correspondence of the ways of thinking. For example, ashramas. There are 4 stages of the Brahmanic life. First, he starts with the studies of the Veda, Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is actually the following the Brahman. Brahman is not the spirit. Brahman is the Veda, the word. In the Vedas, Brahman means the hymn. Yeah? Brahman is the mantra which is rising from the heart. So this kind of learning the Veda is Brahmacharya. Later it means totally different thing. It means, freedom from the sexual life. But because in this period of studies there was no married life, that's why it was associated with this particular activity. But truly speaking, it's a study of the Veda. So at the age of 6, the boy was introduced to the Vedic studies by initiation, Upanayana so-called. He was whispered to his ear the Gayatri mantra, was given the thread over the shoulder. Indians know about this very well. And was introduced to the Gurukula. In the Gurukula, he was staying with Guru and studying the Vedas by heart. His purpose was to learn all the texts perfectly by heart, and it's a number of texts, a huge number. So, and it has to be totally mastered. So he spends approximately 20-25 years in the Gurukula. And learning texts with his teacher and other students there, and doing the work, whatever is needed in the ashram. After becoming Snataka, finishing his studies at the age approximately 30, he is ready to marry. He marries, and becomes grihastha, becomes the household. So from 30 to approximately 55, 60, he is a householder. And when his first grandson is born, he is ready to leave for the forest, and he becomes vanaprastha, the one who left for the forest. So he must leave his house. He should not enjoy his old age in the house. He has to go to the forest and live there. And what is interesting in the forest, this is the time for Aranyakas. You see, Samhita is this period, Brahmana is his Grihastha period, and Aranyaka means the book of the forest. In the forest, he, for the first time, he reflects upon the texts of Samhita and application of those texts to his married life. Every day he makes oblations, he invites gods to different rituals and so on. So he reflects upon his married and his spiritual life in the forest for the first time. So all the myths of creation, all the metaphysical first intuitive texts he reads for himself in the forest and reflects upon his life. Once that period of 25 years approximately is over in the forest, if he is still alive, he moves into sannyasa. And sannyasa is total renunciation, total surrender to the divine. And there, the texts of the Upanishads are explaining to him the very quintessential knowledge of the Supreme. So he is looking only for the divine. How to join himself with the divine. He is not even bothering about cooking for himself. Whatever he receives as bhikshu, bhikshu is the one who is a beggar, we translate it, but it's not beggar. It's the one who wants to share with you his knowledge, and you share with him some food or some money. So it's a sharing session. So he eats only what he receives as through his arms. That's why they are walking around. They receive everything with respect, whatever you give them. They don't demand anything. They don't beg. These are not the beggars. It's for you, how to say, you have to feel honored to share with them some food or some money because they dedicated their life to the knowledge, and they will kind of extend their blessings upon you. So this is, if you look at the Brahmanic life, you can see that all his life was considered to be as one educational project. First, he learns the text perfectly by heart, all of them, including Upanishads. He never reads from the books. There are no books with him. It's all in his heart and mind. He carries the whole, he is the library. Then he applies that, all what is within him, to his married life every day, mantras invoking for his grihastha period. And then he reflects upon it, of his grihastha period, and his studies in the vanaprastha period, all using the text svadhyaya, reading the text to himself, secretly sitting somewhere in the forest, reading and contemplating upon those texts he knows perfectly by heart, and finally becoming sannyasi. Just look at this, how everything was beautifully arranged. Interestingly enough, other periods also archetypically fit into this thinking. You can see that for yuga, Satya Yuga is the yuga of the childhood or truth, where we are purely perceiving the reality without any doubts or fears. So there is a freedom of perception or purity or innocence of the child. Treta Yuga is the beginning of dealing with reality in more concrete way, and Dvapara is more a conventional age, as Sri Aurobindo says, and Kali Yuga is finally individualist age. These yugas are compared to the cow of Dharma. In Satya Yuga, cow of Dharma stands on 4 legs. In Treta Yuga, on 3 legs. In Dvapara, on 2 legs, trying to. And in Kali Yuga, on 1 leg, like ballerina. So, if we compare also to Varnas, to the 4 Varnas, we have Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. We have also Purusha's body described in Purusha Sukta in the Rig Veda, that Brahmanas became Mukham, his mouth became Brahmanas, the priests, his bahu, the shoulders, and the arms became his kshatriyas, the power, the kings, his urus, his torso, and productive, this digestive productive system became vaishyas. The vaishyas means people, the exchange of energy, the bringing to birth, the creation and bringing to birth children. And Shudras, padas, feet, which are supporting the whole system, Purusha, to move and to act. So you can see these 4 elements in our body, which are associated with 4 different realms of knowledge, approaches to knowledge, or approaches to reality, let us say. These 4 will be later associated with the great Mahashaktis and with Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Vijnana, and with 4 great Mahashaktis, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. Quite amazing. Maheshwari is knowledge, Mahakali is power, Mahalakshmi is bliss, that very bliss, yes, which Vaishyas are producing and exchanging, and Mahasaraswati is the perfection, is in work, in action. So here again, this archetypal thinking, which is well known to all of us, only we never put them together to see that they somehow resemble one another, and kind of go together in our way of looking at Indian civilization. There are more things. There is Agnihotra. I don't want to go to all of them. There are locations of the worlds, creatures. Agnihotra is a specific topic. I kind of separated here with the red color. I have to explain it separately how Agnihotra is done. Okay, I will stop here for your reflections, questions, doubts, and then I will continue moving straight into the Vedic paradigm of knowledge, from which we will start our journey. This is my kind of brief introduction. No questions. Then I go straight. Or should I give you a little more time for?
The whole idea of going into the forest is complete renunciation, is it, Dr. Vladimir?
Yeah.
The whole idea of going into the forest is renunciation.
Before total, yes, surrender. So going to the forest is not yet full renunciation. Yeah?
I see.
It's still a reflection upon that what happened in your life, upon the, so to say, life of the householder and that Gurukula life. So you have the texts, you have the everything within you. Now you need time to reflect.
Right.
You to understand for yourself for the first time. You are ready already because you lived 60 years. Now you're ready to try to comprehend what it is all about. Yeah. Amazing. When you're 60, you're ready to think over. Not before. Before you have to acquire knowledge, acquire action, be active, and now you are ready to reflect upon it.
When does the Brahmacharya period, this, the sexual abstinence, when does that take place?
From 6 to 30, yeah.
6 to 30.
It's also quite amazing because if you at 30 years you are married for the first time, you are quite strong man from any point of view, from the point of view of health and from the point of view of productivity.
So up to then, you have this abstention. Yeah,
yes, absolute.
Up to
yes.
30.
Yes.
And afterwards, after 30?
After 30, you are married, you produce children,
Okay.
and once your
From
grandchild is born.
I see. Yeah. I see. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you have two different rinam. Rinam is the debts. You have the debts for the gods, for your soul to develop, and the debts for pitris. You must produce progeny. You must leave the trace of your spiritual work in the genetic.
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever you tried, experienced, or endured, all the changes within genetic modification, you have to pass forward. And that's why Grihastha period is so important.
So at the age of 30, you go to the forest, yeah?
At the age of 50 or 60, after your first grandchild is born, you go to the forest.
Oh.
Then you're ready to reflect.
Oh, okay.
So you have to first to produce grandchildren, and for that you need to have children who would endure again Brahmacharya period, right, and will be ready to produce grandchildren. So you can calculate it's approximately 60 years old. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Everything's a little bit delayed. Yeah.
Well, I'm 61. I'm ready to go to Vanaprastha.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting.
Right.
Question?
Thank you. Yes.
Why does it seem that in the course of your life, it seems like going up, not in vitality, but in development, but then in the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, our perception is it going down. You would expect the opposite. In the times, I see the link, but then in the physical, I don't see the connection.
Right. Well, it's a good question to keep for as long as we live and try to figure out why this Kali Yuga is at the end and why this individualist age and what are these kind of narrowing down the streams of that Satya Yuga at the beginning. Why can't we be always children all our life, happy and open to the sunshine, instead of we become heavy, because there's something going on in the evolution. We have to produce, we have to endure in time, and to endure in time we have to make changes within ourselves and pass these changes to our progeny. So this is a duty, a debt we have to pay for being embodied in the body. It's amazing how they think. Yeah. So not only that we have a duty to evolve spiritually, to really work on ourselves, to receive this higher spiritual knowledge from the Rishis, to embody it, to learn by heart perfectly all the hymns. You cannot imagine what treasure it is to learn all the hymns by heart and to know all those, mantras which uplift your consciousness. And now, with that upliftment, you have to pass the seed towards future generations. Yeah? So to say, you have to endure in time because you know you can't stay. But still you have a kind of a duty for yourself to continue in Vanaprastha, to reflect of how all this is connected. And you start reflecting, that's why I had to do this or that. Now it makes sense. Now I can understand for the first time why I lived this life and that life after in that way. And once you are ready with those reflections, you kind of fulfilled all those personal kind of inquiries within this Vanaprastha period. You are ready to surrender to the divine. So you are seeking only this, divine joining it in sannyasa period. For me, it makes totally sense. When I discovered this system, I thought, this is a perfect system for the spiritual life, but not for the ordinary life. Ordinary life is viewed totally different. This is an educational project for the spiritual life. All right.
So does that mean that only a particular sect used to go through these changes or evolution, or was it meant for the society in general at that time?
It was for Brahmins mainly at the beginning, but later, interestingly, Kshatriyas joined it, they started. So the distribution of knowledge in the Varnic system was such that on the top, the Brahmins had access to the Vedas, yes? Then Kshatriyas, there was a second kind of level, as you see here, Samhita, and you see Brahmanas, and then Brahmanas, you have Kshatriyas. Yeah? So the commentaries, so all the myths and rituals were given to Kshatriyas. Yeah? So they studied those texts, but not so much Samhita texts. Yeah? And then you see Vaishyas are already connected more mainly with Mahabharata, epic stories, Puranas. They were written for them, so to say. They also had access to some part of knowledge in mythological formation. And finally, Shudras didn't have access at all to any knowledge. Yeah? So they were never taught anything. They only heard some stories there from Puranas when there were some gatherings and so on. So redistribution of knowledge was from the top to the bottom in such a way that not everyone has access to a particular knowledge. Yeah?
Thank you. And as per the table, when I go through this, there are the yugas that has been mentioned here. Brahmacharya in Satya Yuga and then Grihastha at Treta Yuga. Does that mean that during those yugas, separate yugas, these things are more dominated? Like in Satya Yuga, maybe the Brahmacharya was dominated. So mostly people used to go towards Brahmacharya. Is this what it is?
No. It's archetypal thinking. It's not that it is Brahmacharya Satya Yuga. It is within the Satya Yuga, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali, the same archetypal thinking as Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. I mean, the same kind of modality of which is creating it's like 4 seasons, yeah, like spring, summer, autumn, and winter, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can you do with this? Yeah. So it's kind of reminding us the same cycle of time, or cycle of all the seasons or activities in life which differ from one another in a specific manner. We start with a very luminous and open consciousness. By the way, this is something what Sri Aurobindo suggests when he describes in the ideal of human unity and the human cycle our beginnings. Yes, and he says that the whole misconception of our history is that we begin as if we are separated individuals, and then we start building groups, and within the groups we slowly develop. But he says that it's quite an opposite. We had a very luminous beginnings, yes, which, how he says this beautifully, we were social beings without society or something. I kind of don't remember exactly his words. So we lived within the life of the society without being a social being, or we were a social being without the society. So we were not determined, as Mother says, to be religious, but renouncing all religions of that kind, It's like a child. Child is free to experience everything. And is allowed to do everything and to play with everything. It's of that kind. So he had in himself certain qualities which later are becoming more and more veiled and kind of withdraw to. So on the surface, he becomes more and more preoccupied with his own arrangement of life, and his inequalities kind of fade away, as it were.
Thank you.
It's like from the childhood. Yes, very, very good comparison with the childhood growing to the adulthood and then finally becoming old and wise, but less and less capable of that freedom of experience.
So this is actually very fascinating that we lived till 60 to get that realization and then go towards Vanaprastha.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
very
in
fascinating.
60. For me too. I think only in 60 we are ready to really deeply, philosophically,
Yes.
psychologically think about the meaning of life. Before we are too engaged, too many energies are still to be experienced and fulfilled. And later, when we grow into this freedom from this, we tried everything, experienced everything, we have enough data to reflect upon.
So I wanted to ask, sir,
Yeah.
you're talking about the Brahmacharya, all the ashrams. I wanted to know that at 6 years, a child was sent to the Brahmacharya. So was it only boys, or was it also girls who were sent to the
Only
ashram?
boys.
So what happened to the girls? Where did they have access to this knowledge?
And unfortunately, only through this interaction with their parents, with their husbands, they didn't have that because this formation took place in the Brahmanic period, yes, in the period of Brahmanas, when the ritualism, when before in the Samhita period, it was very different. Samhita, and you can also notice that in Samhita period there are no temples. Temples come much later. So there were, in the period of Brahmanas, the Vedis, the altars were built, yes. In these altars, they made certain sacrifices, offerings, oblations, and so on, to the Pitris, to the gods. But in the Samhita period, even those are not there. There is only Svadhyaya. That means there is only the text which you use as the vehicle to uplift your consciousness. Yeah? So you are dealing with the text, then you start applying it to Vedis, building the altars, and then in your ritualistic everyday life, you do oblation in Agnihotra, you have the fire to make oblation to with mantras to invoke special gods and so on. And then later the temples appear. So those Vedis, those altars become the places of worship or temples. Temples come much later. And this is an amazing. We think about temples as if they were always there, but they come like 1,500, 2,000 years back. Yeah? Before there were no temples, there were altars. And before there were no altars, there was the being who is invoking the higher powers to transform his consciousness in life. Yeah? And that was embodied first in the rituals, Vedis, altars, and that was embodied in the temples. And you see how we are slowly separated from the inner to the outer.
Yes.
When the outer takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sir, even during Vanaprastha, it is not the husband and the wife both going to the forest.
Both husband and wife. Sometimes wives are left behind, as Yajnavalkya, you remember, discusses this with Maitreyi and Katyayani, that he had two wives, and one of which wanted to inherit his wealth, his kind of material wealth, and the other said, I want to have a knowledge. Can you give me knowledge before leaving to Vanaprastha? And he gave her knowledge, this beautiful knowledge that it is not for the sake of the wife that the wife is dear, but it is for the sake of the self, Atman, that the wife is dear. It's not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear. It's for the sake of the Atman that husband is dear. It's not for the sake of the children that the children are dear. It is for the sake of Atman that children are dear. It's not for the sake of the wealth that the wealth is dear. It's for the sake of the Atman that the wealth is dear. It's not for the sake of the all that the all is dear, but for the sake of the Atman. That was his teaching to Maitreyi, his wife, before going to Vanaprastha. So there are cases where the wives are left behind, and there are cases when the wives are going together with husbands into the forest and sitting there and cooking for them.
And also the Pandavas, when they went to the forest, I think Draupadi did go with them. So
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
thing.
well, she was in exile, yes, definitely.
No, not that time, later.
Mm,
The I'm not
correct.
talking about
You-
that exile, that little later, that when the
correct.
Mahabharata war got over and the
Yeah,
Vanaprastha. Yeah. Thank you, sir. That was very
yeah,
beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. You're right. Yes, she went with them. In the Samhita period, were there. This we have to understand. Not only Rishis, but there are more than 30 Rishikas in the Rig Veda. There is Rishika Savitri, for example. That very Savitri, whom we worship as the Divine Mother, and she actually is the author of the hymn of marriage. That marriage hymn which everybody heard when they married, because in India that marriage hymn everybody knows. It's the most popular hymn in India. Every marriage has this hymn. It is a composition by Savitri. Rishika Savitri. It's kind of interesting. She's the most famous Rishi in the Veda, in India. So there were many Rishikas. There was Lopamudra, for example, the wife of Agastya Rishi, where she speaks with him. There are hymns, you know. She complains to him about him being too remote in his meditations and he does not attend to the duties of the household. And so when he listened to her complaints, it's quite interesting, he agreed with her. He said, yes, you are right. I'm too much into my, you know. So, and he came back to the duties of the earth. So this is something interesting. Yeah? You can't find it later in the post-Vedic literature. So the period of Samhita was unique. It was like a childhood. It was open to the experiences, to the truth of the existence. Yeah. Mother speaks about the Vedic Rishis as involutionary beings. There is the whole passage I kind of prepared for you to read. She says that they are actually involutionary beings. You know that evolutionary beings, it's who we are. Yeah? We are evolutionary beings. We have the soul which is evolving in us. But involutionary beings are those who have nothing to achieve here. And they come down and bring their higher knowledge into earthly atmosphere for human beings. So to say, they are not evolving beings. Avatars are involutionary beings. They don't evolve. They come with a specific mission to accomplish certain action. Vivekananda was an involutionary being. He was not here to evolve. He brought something, some touch from... Mother speaks about him, that he was an involutionary being. So if you think about avatars and rishis, rishis were the families of avatars who had higher knowledge. That's why in Samhitas, in the Rig Veda, you will never find any discussion about mukti. There is no concept of mukti, yeah, or moksha. There is no liberation. Why? They are not interested in liberation in the Rig Veda. They are interested in transformation of our earthly nature by the Spirit. They are liberated already. They are not interested in liberation. They are not looking for freedom. They are looking for transformation. That's why all this, what is sacrifice? Invocation of these higher powers to come down and to transform, to change our consciousness, our life. Yeah? It is this. It's amazing. And then later it changes. And this shift of paradigms we have to see. When we become more and more individualistic, we are interested in our own salvation. Yeah? So we are looking for that way out, not way in. They're looking for, so to say, they have already unity and they look for diversity, as it were. And we have the diversity and look for unity, as it were. You know? So we kind of reversed. We are evolutionary beings looking for liberation and emancipation and way out from this imprisonment into the ignorance and darkness. And they are looking for bringing the light into this darkness because they are light. We are darkness looking for light, and they are light looking for darkness. So this shift, this turn is important for us because it will explain why what happened to us, and why the Rig Veda and the Samhitas are so important for us even today, because they give us the formation of this, how we originally should look at what we are here for. They give us some kind of a sense who we are, truly are. And every time when we read the Rig Veda, I can feel this. Okay, so do we have still time, or we are finished with the time? Tell me please, because I do not know. We have 1.5 hours or one?
We have half an hour, Vladimir.
We have half an hour. So I will go straight into the Vedic paradigm, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
So that very Vedic paradigm, which we have to cover today. This is something I want us to arrive at today. So the Vedic paradigm, in the Vedic paradigm, the faculties of consciousness, and we are dealing mainly with faculties in these presentations. These faculties means seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, all these, our activities or instruments of consciousness were viewed as projected from the Divine Mother, Aditi, Chit Tapas, Chit Shakti, infinite consciousness force. Or Aditi, that's her name. The supreme emanations of that consciousness force are called Adityas, the sons of Aditi or her faculties, Adityas. There are 7 of them: Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, Bhaga, Daksha, Amsha, and Surya. You know something of it, yeah? Some of them you definitely know, like Mitra, Varuna, Bhaga, Surya, you heard of them. So here they are, Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, Bhaga, Daksha, Amsha, and Surya. They are given in this particular order. Order is important. So these are the 7 sons of Aditi. Aditi is being represented by these 7 sons. Sri Aurobindo gives the description of all of them and explanation. I will read them. Varuna represents the vastness and of infinite being, Sat. These are the words of Sri Aurobindo. Mitra, luminosity and harmony of consciousness, Chit. Aryaman, the power of the divine tapas, energy. Bhaga, the bliss of the divine fulfillment, Ananda. So you can see Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda. So Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, Bhaga is Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda. That later, what we know as Sat, Chit, Ananda, or Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda in the Tantric tradition, are already here as personifications or the gods of the Vedic system. It's important for us because at the end we will see how it comes together. So it is the same knowledge, only differently presented. And then we have Daksha, Amsha, and Surya, 3 more. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about the triple supermind as unity, many in one and one in many, and many, 3 layers of the supermind. And these would be the 3 godheads of the supermind. Daksha represents the power of thought, capital T, all discerning and all distributing power of supramental consciousness. Amsha represents the diversity in oneness. Amsha means literally portion, or that portion, that spark of our souls, as it were, supported by unifying power of Daksha, so that diversification. And Surya or Savitar represents all the 7 Adityas and projects them into a lower creation. His rays represents the diversity in the domains of Svar. We will come to Svar as overmind later. So these are 3 levels of the supermind, Daksha, Amsha, and Surya. Here they are again. So we have 4 transcendental godheads, or Satchitapasananda, and we have triple supermind, Daksha, Amsa, and Surya. Now these are the 7 Adityas, and there was the 8th Aditya, who was born from Aditi, and he was born ugly, as it is said, without limbs, Martanda his name. So when Aditi saw him being born without limbs, Martanda, dead embryo, as it were, it's the translation, under embryo, or the egg, Marta, dead embryo. So she left him with her 7 sons, and he was left alone. And his name is Vivasvat, or Vivasvan. And it's quite interesting because it is the luminous one. So that without limbs, dead embryo became the luminous Godhead. It was the sun stolen by the Titans and put into the subconscious cave, as it were. It is the projection of Surya into the subconscious or inconscient cave. And Vivasvat reminds us of the Lucifer here. Lucifer was the fallen angel, also luminous one. It's quite interesting that they both have the same name, Vivasvat and Lucifer. Absolutely, as if Lucifer is a translation of Vivasvat. In the Veda, there is a hymn where it is said that Agni is rising from Vivasvat, from the depth of the earth, from Vivasvat. So Vivasvat is the is the sun in the inconscient, in the subconscious cave. If you look at our earth, we have a crust on the top, but in the center of earth, we have the sun, the luminous, the core. It's amazing. Yeah? We have the sun outside and we have the sun inside, as it were, even physically. So it's not really something we do not know. So this Vivasvat is the creator of the universe, of this lower hemisphere. These 7 Adityas belong to the transcendental world. Yes, 3 of the supermind and 3 of the transcendental Satchitapasananda. Vivasvat represents all of them here in the lower hemisphere. So here they are, all of them. So Varuna Sat, Mitra Chit, Aryaman Tapas, Ananda Bhaga, Daksha supramental knowledge force, all uniting and all discerning, Amsha supramental many in one, and Surya Savitri supramental manifestation. The rays of the sun are shining out into the darkness. It is even said in one hymn, when the darkness meets the sun, so the sun is being pervaded by the darkness, and that generates the rays. The rays are nothing but the meeting of the darkness and this body of the sun. So this kind of, going into the darkness of the light. Quite interesting image. So here we are, Aditi with her 7 sons are projected. These 7 sons are projected through Vivasvat as Surya into the lower hemisphere. So Varuna as the divine being, becomes here a material existence, matter. Yeah? Mitra, Aryaman, that consciousness, tapas, becomes here life force. Bhaga becomes what Sri Aurobindo would call the projection of the Jivatma, into this Anandamaya Purusha, yes, of our psychic being. And these three are the triple overmind, which becomes the triple mental consciousness. The supermind is projected into the triple mind. So this is Diti, the sister of Aditi, the twin sister. There are two sisters, Aditi and Diti. Aditi is infinite consciousness bliss, and Diti is dividing consciousness by darkness. So these two lower and higher hemisphere. If you need to clarify something, you have to stop me. Otherwise, I'll go ahead. So Surya Savitri, that Surya of the supermind, as we know as supermind, Sri Aurobindo says this is the symbol of the supermind in the Veda. The rays of the sun thus build up the luminous planes called in the Veda Svar, the realms of the ray of the sun, luminous realms. It has three luminous realms called Trirochanas, which thus project the higher three realms of the cosmic mind, Tisrodhyavah, three heavens, and which sustaining the three spaces of the vital realm called Trini Rajansi or Tri Rajansi, three shining realms, and which supported by the three foundations of the physical called Tisrobhumich, or three earths. So you can see three luminous realms, three heavens, three shining realms, and three earths. Here the scheme, that what I wanted to present today. You can see the triple supermind, unity, one in many, many in one in many. This is his major three different realms as described by Sri Aurobindo, or Daksha, Amsha, and Surya in the Veda. Then they are projected into the triple overmind, and the triple overmind, this Svar world, is Trirochanas. I will give you here. Trirochanas are supramental overmind, according to Sri Aurobindo, overmind intuition, or simply overmind, and mental overmind. I can't even remain mental overmind or intuition. He says about this in many different ways. I just simplify here for us. So we have supramental overmind, overmind proper, and intuition. Intuition is the lowest realm of the overmental consciousness. It is that which is like lightning flashing down to our mentality. And this triple mental consciousness is illumined mind, higher mind, and mind proper. Yeah. Now I'm coming back. Of course, there is something else I wanted to, I'm coming back to this. So here they are, this Tisrodhyavah, three heavens, or three minds. That is, mental mind is illumined mind in that Sri Aurobindo's terminology. In Mother's terminology, it's a mental mind, vital mind. So mental mind is Sahasrara chakra, as it were. You know? It is here located, the illumined mind. This dynamic Ajna chakra is the vital mind proper, or the higher mind in the Sri Aurobindo's terminology. Physical mind is the chakra of the expression of in the throat. So I'm kind of combining two languages. One is about Sukshma Sharira with chakras, just to easily understand. These are mental three realms, yes, within the embodied state of being. And there are three minds. Here they are. There are also higher three chakras, which Mother speaks of as over mental chakras, and these will be three rochanas of intuition over mind and supramental over mind before supermind is reached. Yeah? So Sri Aurobindo somewhere says to understand the mind, we need to understand the supermind. Mind cannot be understood without the supermind. Yeah? Supermind has a key to understand how mind functions, because the mind is nothing but projection of the triple supermind. And you notice that the mental mind is more unifying, vital mind diversifying, one in many, in many in one, and physical mind is totally spelling out in time and space the elements of the mind. Yeah? So we have this unity, one in many, in many in one, and many all the time on all the three levels. Mind altogether is more unifying, vital is more diversifying, and physical is totally dispersed or unique in its own physical presentation. And within these three realms, there are also three types, yeah, more unifying, diversifying, diversed, unifying, diversifying, diversed, unifying, diversifying, diversed. So you can see that the physical, in a way, is the enterprise of this supramental manifestation. The physical itself would never come into existence. Notice physical mind, physical vital. The physical is a part of the mind and a part of the vital. And the mind and vital are part of the physical. You cannot separate physical from the mental and vital operations, and they are nothing but projection of the supramental action of more unifying, diversifying, and diversified action. Wow, this is something. This is the Vedic vision, which tells us nearly everything we have to know about ourselves, at least for me. So if you look at this as the 9 levels of our consciousness, we can see that mental mind is our Sahasrara chakra, whereas if we will go by chakras, and this is quite interesting because Sumitra Basu was giving very interesting talks on the chakras, and you can connect with his talks. So then vital mind is this Ajna chakra, chakra of the third eye, as it were, or that vital mind. Can you imagine a universal mind with the vitality, with the impulse of the will, and physical mind more expressing mind in the Vishuddha chakra. This is the head region. This is the torso region, where there is mental vital is more Anahata chakra. Vital is more Manipura chakra, which is quite reasonable. Yeah, that is the proper vitality, the impulses, the feelings, whereas mental vital is more emotions, kind of painted with the mind, with the concept, with the unifying element. The emotions are the feelings with the unifying element. Yeah? And physical vital is more sensations, electrical impulses in the vital, in the physical body. Yeah? That is the Svadhisthana chakra. This is our torso. Yeah? Heart, navel, and Svadhisthana chakra. And then mental physical is our Muladhara chakra, which is the top of the legs and the beginning of the torso. On the level of the knees, there is vital physical, Mother says. There are 2 more chakras below Muladhara, which are never mentioned because nobody goes there. But there is on the level of the knees vital physical, and on the level of the feet, below the feet, there is proper physical. It's amazing. So we have 9 chakras in the embodied state, and Mother says there are 3 more above the head, and these would be 3 rojanas: intuition, overmind, and supramental overmind. And thus we have 12 chakras. This is the full constitution of our embodied state, which connect us to the triple supermind. And triple supermind, interestingly enough, is nothing but the projection of the Sat, Chit, Tapas, and Ananda. Again, the same triplicity is being projected. So Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda projected into the triple supermind, projected into the mental, vital, and physical, projected into the mental mind, physical mind, mental, vital, physical, vital, mental, physical, vital, physical, physical. These are the terms brought by the Mother. Mother took them from the occult tradition of the Semitic tradition, of the Chaldean tradition. In the occultism, they study these levels by these names. Interestingly also that in the Veda, they speak about Rishis who are called Navagva Rishis, Rishis of 9 rays. These are the Rishis which wanted to break through to the supermind, and they have to invoke Indra, and Indra is the power of intuition, of that Vajra lightning which is breaking through from above. And they bring Indra with Ayasya Rishi and become Dashagva Rishis, Rishis of 10 rays. So they join the Svar world. So they open up to the higher realms. So Navagva Rishis, Rishis of 9 rays, become Dashagva Rishis, Rishis of 10 rays. And this is the myth of the Rig Veda, very popular. Okay, here I stop, finally. If you have some questions on this vision of the Veda, which is important for us because it actually embodies everything else which follows. I know it's a very limited time, a lot of information, but I'm sure that you studied this by yourself, and because of that, it just should be ringing the bell somewhere.
Can we put questions in the chat group, in the WhatsApp? Just to, if it comes
sure.
after and so on, then maybe we can go back to it.
Certainly, Joe. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to absorb that in here. Really appreciate you showing the slides actually after the session, and then we can
Great.
go through them again at our leisure. You know, because there is a lot to absorb with this. Yeah, really fascinating.
There is right.
Really fascinating.
Oh, thank you. You see, here is one more slide, which is quite important to see. These are the levels made picture by Huta from the Mother's sketch and explanation of the levels of consciousness. And here you can see that from the physical, which is red, blood red, inconscient is dark blue and nearly black. The vital is more purple, between red and blue, and then mental levels become blue, higher mind light blue, and illumined mind very light blue. And then look at the jump, intuitive mind. It is the Svar world, that Dashagva Rishis, which I was mentioning, the Indra's realm, blue and totally yellow, nothing, no transition, as if a new level altogether. And then over mental proper is this multi-colored level. All the colors are there, like clusters of life, And supermind is like liquid gold, Mother says, color. And then bliss is like saffron color of India's saffron, the sannyasi interestingly. It's kind of rosy, but not totally rosy. Consciousness power is like silver, liquid silver. And existence is pure white, and unmanifest is pure white. And beyond all of these, Asat, Sat, Chit, there is some supreme person. The secret.
Unmanifest is what?
Unmanifest is Asat.
Okay.
Asat, Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda, and so on. Vijnana, or the mental realm, that is Svar world with intuition, then the mental proper. But what is interesting, that beyond Sat and Asat, beyond being and non-being, there is a person, the supreme person, Mother says. And she makes this picture. There is someone there, which is neither being nor non-being, Purushottama, the one who always is. He can be and can be not. It is up to him. All right, this is a good spot to stop. And I just wanted to show you this shift. And if you want to read it in Savitri, you please read the canto, The Self of Mind, where Sri Aurobindo describes the shift from the mental, illumined mind level to the intuitive mind. And that is an amazing shift. All the experiential changes are there. And so it will explain to you how Indra works. He speaks about luminous finger which fell from above and showed.
Which canto is that?
Canto, The Self of Mind.
Self of mind.
In the book 2.
Okay.
All right, we can stop here for today, and next time we continue to see how these faculties, these which we were looking into today, are projected in the post-Vedic tradition, in the Upanishads, and then in Sankhya and Yoga, and finally in the integral Yoga, Tantra and integral Yoga.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vladimir. Really
Thank you.
absorbing.
Thank you. I will close with mantra if you don't mind. And then the minute of silence. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So until tomorrow, everyone.
Yeah.
5 o'clock. Thank you, Vladimir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Bye.